Did it already tonight. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Where's My Sage. I'm Mike from Tactical Bigfoot Research. Kristie will not be joining us tonight. She had a little bit of surgery, so she's a little under the weather, but she'll be watching from the outskirts and definitely commenting. I have some great guests tonight that I'm going to bring on that are here to help me talk a little cryptid, a little Bigfoot, a little bit of environment, getting out in the world. So hello from Where's My Sage. Next week, we will have Chuck Porter from Salute to Service, and we'll be doing a first responder military paranormal experience show. Chuck runs a radio channel down in or radio show down in South Carolina, and we've been talking about doing this for a while. So if you're a first responder or prior service military or law enforcement, have had an experience while on the job, and you'd like to share your experience with us, we've got a couple of folks that had some military and law enforcement experiences, one Mapiguari and another Bigfoot sighting that should be joining us. And it's anonymous. If you want, we can sneak you in. So with that, I am going to bring you guys on with my guests. So I'm going to add them. Here we go. We have Steve Kulls, the Squatch detective.
Hello.
Jay Bachochin.
Just call me Fred.
Yeah, Fred. He's Fred Bachochin. I'm sorry, Jay. Yeah, I will learn one day. I've known Jay for a couple of years, and it still kills me. And then Mr. Barackman. I know.
CLAF.
Yeah, okay. So today's been a little crazy.
Claff Barackman.
Yeah, it's nice to see you, Mac.
Yeah. Throw this out the window. Well, there was one guest I had, and is now gone. So it's one of those days, guys. I thought going to work was crazy enough at 4 a.m., and I appreciate those coming in from the West Coast and Central Time Zone. So Jay and Cliff, thank you for coming in. Steve and I over here on the East Coast, it's a little different world. So hello to Shireen, hello Mika, and Billy, and Denise, Kathleen, and just kind of get everybody in here. And hello, Michelle. Just so you know, I do have my mask. My mother sent me a Believe mask, so I have something for COVID. So
doesn't cover the entire face, though.
No, I need something to cover my whole face. We know that. So, so gentlemen, I thank you for joining me tonight. And we're here is a little craziness. Kind of talk about Bigfoot. There's the boss. She's here to keep an eye on us and keep me in a line at least.
Get well, Kristie.
Yes, please get well soon.
I don't know why I shouted.
Tell you what to do. You do whatever you want.
Yeah.
Don't get well. Get well.
Yeah, she's a great co-host. I think she just wanted to see some people from the other side a little closer or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
So, gentlemen, I've had some talks with you guys over the years and a couple of different events, and I appreciate you joining me tonight. What I'd like to kind of go over, maybe some of your backgrounds and stuff like that, and how you each got into this crazy cryptid world. So, if somebody would like to start first, and
I say we let Clef do it first.
Okay.
Or Claff.
Cliff.
Right.
I'm so sorry. So
my background is the stock room at the museum.
Yes.
So that answers that question. And what was the second one?
How you got into Bigfooting or searching for a cryptid?
Well, I'm assuming like all the rest of y'all and everybody listening, I've always been a little weird. And I've always kept an interest in eccentric things, unusual things. And of course, growing up in the 1970s, I watched a lot of In Search of, and so my fields of weirdness were fertilized well, so to speak. And so I've always kept an interest in all these sort of things, but never really thought they were real necessarily, or didn't think either way about it really. But when I was in college, I stumbled across a couple books actually that were basically collections of scholarly journal articles written about Sasquatches. And that's when I realized science is being done on this. And I'm an amateur scientist, and I'm an amateur astronomer, for example. And I understand that amateur scientists, like astronomy, for example, amateur astronomers contribute a lot to professional astronomy. They they discover the vast majority of comets, for example. And I thought this subject, the Sasquatch subject, would be another opportunity where amateurs could make a significant contribution because, frankly, the academics weren't stepping up to the plate for us. So somebody had to do it. So that's what kind of got me into it.
Awesome. Mr. Kulls?
Well, like Cliff in the 70s, with Legend of Boggy Creek, In Search of, the show with Peter Gray's Mysterious Monsters, and so at a young age, I got wide-eyed and at this stuff, and by trade I'm a professional investigator, so I have a propensity to investigate things, and at one point in time I found out that hey, there were sightings near me. I want to see if this stuff is real or not, and that's how I walked into it or fell into it.
That's pretty good. I never do that.
Yep.
That's a good one. Hey, I got to say that I must have had a really weird kid as a neighbor in Cliff, because that's kind of how I grew up too. I was always that kid who sat in the basement, watched Godzilla and Gamera while everyone's playing softball outside. My interest has always been into the supernatural, but I remember seeing Mysterious Monsters when I was about 10. I think my dad took me to go see it at the theater. And I saw the Patterson Gimlin film back then, and I thought it was a guy in a suit. I'm like, even at 10 years old, I'm like, what am I looking at? So honestly, I'm a little late to the party with Bigfoot, because I didn't start researching or looking into Bigfoot until 2013, when I guess I was out in the woods and I actually experienced something myself. And ever since then, I've fallen into the abyss and I can't get up. Can't get out. So that's kind of what I've been doing since 2013. So I'm a little bit later than you guys, but I'm glad to be part of the party.
I'm even later than you guys. With my career, it was always black and white. And then, I caught the In Search of as a kid, but it wasn't until I stumbled into a Bigfoot event there in Chautauqua County and met Steve. That's how I got yanked into the mix. So it was a long time coming. So it's always interesting to hear you guys started 20 years before I did. It's a nice run.
Better late than never.
Yes, yeah. It's been an interesting life. With Where's My Sage. We really try to experience what everybody else is doing, and so each experience is just really the way we want to go.
Well, I always say it's always, you're learning as you go, because I listen to Bigfoot and Beyond, Cliff's and Bobo's show, and Cliff. I still learn so much from you just by what you're talking about, observing, and the different witnesses, the stories that you hear besides the credible evidence that you could find, and that always it inspires me as I'm out in the field to hear what Cliff has done in the past. Same with you, Steve. I haven't forgotten what you've done out there.
Wait, what are you talking about? I get all my information off of Facebook.
YouTube.
Yes. And yeah, I listen to Cliff's show going to and from work. That's my my get up in the morning at 5 a.m. on the drive in, and then my laugh to get my day started, and then the end of the day to come back. So Eric's here with us, Mr. Altman, who
Eric
Butter introduced with everybody. So
and I hope Woody's doing okay too.
Yes. So next, groups you guys belong to, besides BFRO. What other Steve's got his team. What other groups do you guys work with or get out there with into the field? I know, Jay, you've got your WPI. But are there other groups across the country that you correspond with, or kind of bounce off a little headshed or whatever we want to call it?
I mean, pretty much it's Steve, Eric Altman out there, Ricky Chirby, David, Jimmy, Trick, Dee. I mean, everybody, it seems that I've met in Pennsylvania is somebody that I definitely network and work with, as well as Linda Godfrey. She's a good friend of mine here and a neighbor, so I definitely work with her as well.
Cliff, anybody besides? I mean, you're pretty much first with everybody, but
yeah, I don't belong to any group. I don't believe in groups. I don't like groups. I'm not a team player. I don't get along well with others, etc. Actually, I'm kind of exaggerating. I'm playing a bit, but I really did get kicked out of Boy Scouts. I'm just not a group kind of guy. The thing about
there's a joke there.
Yeah, it's like when I was kicked out of Boy Scouts originally, they're all laughing at me. But the fact is,
tenderfoot.
the fact is, groups don't appeal to me. Because and they did for a long time, and they serve a purpose. They certainly served a great purpose in my role or my journey as a Bigfoot researcher. But at this point in the game, they actually do harm to me, so I don't. Because groups are only as strong as the weakest member in the group, and if so when I do work, my work stands on its own and it represents me. Like any group, I'll just say the BFRO, which is a great group. They've done wonderful things, but not every group member is a great person or a great researcher, maybe a good critical thinker or something like that. And when they publish something like that, it represents the entirety of the BFRO, which is why Matt has put in the process of editors and all that sort of stuff, to kind of cut that off at the pass. But at the end of the line, you can't do it all the time. So, and infighting and stuff like that. And there's some other groups that don't like this group, and this group has a pissing match with this group and stuff like that. So I find by me not being in a group, that allows me to work with everybody.
Right.
And that's the way I prefer it, because Bigfoot, above all else, should be an inclusive thing that we enjoy to do. It's not about this side or that side, or this person or that person, for me, against me, up y'all, all y'alls. If you're like that, that doesn't belong in this field. So I encourage independent research and thought, etc. If a group serves your purpose, do it, but avoid all politics. It does damage to all of us. Just like one member in a group does bad work, it represents that group. One member in the community represents all of us, and it makes us all look ugly and petty.
Yeah, definitely. But you do have your
rules on it.
You didn't think I was going to come on and scold you, did you? But that's what you get.
Ouch.
I appreciate the scolding. I appreciate learning. We all learn from each other, and that's the most important thing.
So Mike's leaving Steve now. You're like, hey, gotta go, Steve.
We're on two separate.
Yeah.
Well,
I'm not.
I
like.
I don't
with
run it
everybody.
as a group per se. I mean, we're there.
Yeah.
Well,
it's not-
exactly. That's when I did have a paranormal team looking more into the ghost phenomenon from 2007 to 2013, it was WPI. Ever since at that point, I've been on my own, but I have so many friends that have helped me along on my journey going out there. Because I never hike alone. I just don't. A lot of people are like, you're scared to go out. It has nothing to do with that. It's always been about safety first for me. Mm-hmm. So I always like to go out with, I have so many friends that have gone out and helped me hike out there. So it's been a good thing. So it's not really a team per se, but they're definitely, I do include them.
The journey into the woods, the enjoyment of the
Oh yeah. You gotta have
environment.
fun. You gotta have fun out there, right?
Absolutely.
Yes. So I got a couple more questions, and then we'll kind of loosen things up a little bit. I really reached out, to the guys, and very happy, Cliff, that you could join us as well. I'm very into documentation. Documentation is my thing. And hanging with the two guys on the right side of the screen, it's always been big to me, and see what they have. And I know you mentioned quite a bit of documentation. What do you use for documentation? I mean, I work with Steve all the time, so I kind of follow in his footsteps. But audio, video, good old pen and paper to a notebook, Google Maps, Google Earth. What do you use for documentation, guys? And how do you document? What are you looking for? So,
go ahead, Cliff. I know I like yours because I hear you on your show all the time, but the way you document is awesome.
Well, just try to do the best I can to write things down, frankly, so I remember them. Right. With 26 years of doing this under my belt, there's a lot I forgot. I've probably forgotten more than I'll ever remember, that's for sure. But simple ways, you mentioned a lot of ways to document things. You try to document sounds with an audio recorder. That's what this is. I've got 6 hours of stuff to review today before I go home. At the shop here, at North American Bigfoot Center, my Bigfoot museum. When I get stories all the time. Like I didn't on what day is today? I didn't on Sunday. But that's like the first day in a while that I didn't get at least one or two stories. So it's a kind of a rare thing. And when somebody comes in with something, what I do is I just write up a real quick report. Like it's real simple. The important stuff, where, who, what, where, when, why rarely applies, and a little bit of a narrative. I don't like narratives so much. So I like bullet points. I think that way. On my website, cliffbarackman.com, you can read a more in-depth sighting report. You can even go file one if you have a sighting, or you can just write tests in the thing, and I won't pay attention to it. But you can see the things that I thought were maybe perhaps important for sighting reports. Journals are great if you're into taking diaries and stuff like that. I photograph everything. Yesterday, I was out on an investigation. Somebody saw one a week ago Sunday over by Stevenson, Washington. Excuse me. So I went over there to look around. It had been raining pretty hard. Of course, I didn't expect to find anything, and certainly I didn't. But so I took the camera out, or my phone is really good too. I like cameras better than phones for some reason. So I tried to document everything. When I was out there, took GPS coordinates with Google Earth. I mean, that doesn't always work, of course, if you don't have reception. I don't know, man. I mean, I can go on and on. I mean, just.
Well, for the new kid on the street, we have such a we have a vast array of folks. Right now I'm going to YouTube, a couple different Facebook channels, and some of our guests are new to Bigfoot. They were more on the paranormal aspect, and now that Kristie and I are doing the show, we've kind of experienced getting everybody to experience the world, kind of taste and sample. So even if they could use these same things in the paranormal realm or in their day-to-day life, you're just hiking. What are you going to see out there? The leaves, the trees, the footprints. This week I got a text from, actually it was the end of the last week. Somebody wanted to know they didn't have casting material. What should I do? And I said, well, download a scanning app. And they got a 3D scanning app for their phone. And Carrie there, she's actually right here, up here somewhere, from Bigfoot Mountain. And she took some really cool photos with a 3D camera app on her phone. And you can really see the depth and the contour of the print and kind of move it all the way around. But she didn't have to carry the casting material with her. And I've got one of my, we lost Steve there.
No, I'm still here. I'm still here.
We lost one of my guys that I go out with is a research biologist. He's got a 3D scanner. So, I mean, and it's more down there in the technology.
Well, to butt in for a second, you can pick any
anytime.
If you don't have that sort of app on your phone, or I know a couple of people with flip phones and they refuse to move on, Derek Randall's. But anyway, like if you have a regular camera, if you take photographs, and quite a few photographs, by the way, I'm talking like 30 or 40 or 50 or more photographs, and you do it in sort of a conical shape, like a Christmas tree sort of thing around like the footprint in the middle. So you do this sort of thing, and you keep going up and up and up and up until you take at the very top. You can actually pipe all of those photographs into software that crunches it down and makes a 3D model as well. So you don't even need to download an app, really. You just have to have a whole bunch of space on your SD card. So there's something else.
Awesome.
Yeah. Awesome. Basically, it's when I go out right now, I try to keep everything hands free for my documentation. I use an H1 zoom, pop it up here on a strap, and I do just have a body cam on the whole time. But it's like I kind of want to be just kind of hands free when I'm out there. But I document from the time we're there, from the weather, the time, the date, and I get everything. And well, pretty much I had to buy 2 of these. These are the 5 terabyte drives because my older brother just told me, he goes, Jay, your life is a documentary. It's like I record everything. So I don't want to say I'm a little bit more lazier with the pen and paper as I'm out and about, but I definitely have that. So then I put everything in Excel. So I'm kind of digital right now, but it's the way I keep all my documentation. Even when nothing's happening, that's the best way I can measure each time I'm out, because I go to the same areas, and I've been doing that now for almost 7 years, the same areas. So I don't really go everywhere in Wisconsin. It's this one particular area, and it's when when some people come out, it's just a nice night to hike. It's generally quiet, which is good. I never have any high expectations, which love to, have something right there. But that's why I do bring the extra pair of fresh underwear in my backpack. So just in case.
Just in case.
I look at it totally familiar. If you're just starting out, no need to go crazy with buying equipment. Yes, having a lot of cameras is a wonderful thing. A couple of quick tips I have for people if they're going for a stroll in the woods or whatever, and they want to document stuff. There is an app for the phone called Timestamp Camera Free. And what that does is it makes your camera, and it actually puts a timestamp on it. It can actually geolocate stuff. It can put coordinates on it or a town, depending on how you want to make it work. The beautiful thing, it also works for video. So when you actually shoot the video, it timestamps it with the time, seconds, date, everything that you need to have on there. Just is important for documentation. Like I said, this is for people just starting out. Another thing I always recommend to people, they're only about $15, and it's called the Keeson rod. And it's probably one of the best scaling things I have. It looks like a tape measure, except when you pull it out, you can actually clearly see. And it's great for taking photographs for scale. And the whole thing is that actually comes right out. So if you throw this next to a track, you can see how big the track is. You can see how big, where the tree break was. You can, okay, that's 5'7", because it does mark things at the foot level. So if you see that, 1'2", 1'3", et cetera, et cetera. So it's a really neat little item to have with you. And it's something as an investigator we use to scale things like smaller things. It also, if you have one of those wheels, those walking wheels, somebody says they were staying there and you're doing an investigation, you want to walk. Okay, so where was the creature? Okay, so then you can actually measure from where they were standing to where they saw the creature, and you can have an exact measurement, and that helps in the processes of determining light and time of day. As you're looking at stuff, you can see if, okay, maybe it was a shadow, maybe it was something else. But the big thing I tell people is that when you get a Bigfoot sighting, the first thing you're going to do is try to eliminate, and that's so crucial. Is you try to eliminate, and when you can't eliminate, then you have something.
Awesome, thank you. I guess that was the equipment. And the equipment, I mean, what do you grab? How much equipment do you take with you? How much stuff do you take with you? Some guys I know are, Jay, you're kind of light, easy with the cameras and out. I tend to have 2 of everything when I go out. I don't know why. Usually there's 2 thermals, 2 night vision, 2 GoPros. I usually got about 6 million things, 50 million pockets going. I mean, Cliff and Steve, I mean, what do you guys usually carry? I mean, we used to be big tactical vest guys, and now we're down to little teeny tiny packs. But
yeah,
well,
equipment has gotten smaller too. It all depends on the mission. If I'm going out in the daytime and look around, I may just bring my phone, my Keeson rod, maybe in a digital recorder, and I'm good to go. Out I go. Nighttime maybe a little bit different. Nighttime, of course. And one thing I also want to make mention of: if you're going out in the woods, take a compass, please. Don't trust a compass on the phone. Take an actual good compass. Take your reading before you go in. Okay, you're at the parking lot before the trail or whatever. Look at the compass. See where your what direction your vehicle is and what direction landmarks are, so you don't get lost. So that's usually daytime, knife, bear spray, and a phone,
and an extra set of battery
George?
for the phone too. Oh, Steve froze.
Oh,
Uh-oh.
I did. I'm back.
He's there. We have a question from the audience, from Eric. How much do you refer to archived information such as past reports or newspaper archives when researching a current location?
Oh, they're invaluable. You need them. A lot of times people, will especially newer folks, are like, well, I'm going to go in the woods and look for Bigfoot. But if you're going into the woods looking for Bigfoot or trying to find evidence in a place that's never had a Bigfoot sighting, it's kind of like you're going to find yourself spinning your wheels. Look at your sightings historically, over the last few decades. and that should pinpoint you an area where you need to, where, okay, maybe this is a good area to look. I'm not going to go to the Albany Pine Bush to look for Sasquatch, although I've heard there are people that have. But you need to, that's what becomes important. What kind of behavior are they exhibiting? Are they exhibiting aggressive behavior or passive behavior? Because both of those will tell you what kind of habitat you're going into.
Well, how about even if they're not even called in the newspaper archives, Bigfoot? The place where I'm researching right now, there was a report citing in 1968. It all looks the same relatively, but it's a hairy wild man on top of a bluff. So it's kind of, it's a good place to at least kind of help validate a little bit to the areas I'm researching. So I definitely think very important to go by that information, which, by the way, that was actually from on a Facebook page, the newspaper clipping, kind of what Eric's doing for Chestnut Hill. So it's good.
Yeah, I think the you need to look at, especially for when in the beginning part of your Bigfooting career, you need the sighting reports, and they don't have to be recent. We found something that indicates the Sasquatch will go to the same spots again and again and again, as long as the habitat hasn't really changed significantly. And it's called the halibut effect. And I named it because I used to fish in Southern California, and I noticed where I would catch halibut, I would catch like 5 or 6 halibut, and then the bite would shut off. But I went there a week or two later, they'd be there, and that's because halibut's like hard impact, like bottom, stuff like that. And Sasquatch is like it a certain way too. So if you go to an area that had sightings 100 years ago, sometimes there's still Sasquatches in the area. So, but I will say this, that once you start hitting a lot of places with Sasquatch reports, and if you're observant of the very subtle, then you can start learning what to look for, because 2 of my spots have never had a Sasquatch sighting report come out of it, and they're both amazing. They both, like half the time there's some indication that they're there, and if you're batting 50%, man, you're a Hall of Famer. So especially in Bigfoot, let alone baseball. But it's good to learn an area, and this is like, when I say an area, I don't mean like this campground or something like that. Although that I will say that on finding Bigfoot and whatnot, Moneymaker would go to his reports, and like a lot of the unpublished published ones, and find, they had it happen in this campsite, and he would make sure that he was in the same campsite. And somebody got a lot of action that way, actually, a statistically significant amount of action. But yeah, so particularly in your early days, go to where they've been seen before, even if it's not recent. And if you can go find a place where there's a cluster, and a cluster in Bigfoot is 2 or 3 reports, or more is better, but 2 or 3 is sufficient, and that's within a 5 or 10 mile area. Because like Bluff Creek, for example, 20 miles from the mouth of Bluff Creek, where it runs into the Klamath, the Patterson-Gimlin film site, that's a big swath of land, but there's a cluster in there, a ton of stuff. Clusters don't have to be at one particular site. It's better if they are.
That's cool.
And Mike, if you want to pop that screen up that I put up, this is some of the documentation that you can actually do with Google Maps, which is just an add screen.
Just okay.
Yeah. There you go.
Oh, just add. Gotcha.
Yeah, you know. So this is just some of the stuff you can do. And this isn't a tool I use now that it's there, but I can sit there and actually look at different sightings. Well, this is the Whitehall area, obviously. So as you go out, as you basically come out, you can see all the sightings that have occurred in this area. So it helps to and that kind of helps you pinpoint where things are happening. So.
Cool. With reference material, do you guys use like the Macaulay Library from Cornell for sounds and comparisons at all?
I don't.
No? Okay.
No, I don't, because vocalizations aren't my thing. I try to collect them. They're cool, but not much to say about them, honestly. I leave that to people like Dave Ellis and from the Olympic Project, and friends of mine who are like way more like, how like I'm kind of a cast nerd, right? Like Dave's into vocalizations in the same manner. So, just like if Dave got a footprint, and he's done this before, he's shown me and shared it with me, I do the same with him or whoever else is interested in whatever their specialty line of interest is. So, I do my best to pay attention and be able to identify sounds in the night, and I might use it to go, like, what the heck was that sound, and try to find out what it is. But for the most part, vocalizations aren't my focus.
Yeah. Hey, can I excuse real quick? My kids wanted to say hi to you guys.
Okay.
And the other thing too is what I have done is just to
and Mike.
What's up, bud?
Hello.
Hey, what's up, Bob?
All right, they were just kind of hanging around.
There's the real Bigfooters right there. Those two.
Yeah, sweet.
That's good. Okay. They've been hanging around, and
awesome.
Me and Blake remember meeting you, Cliff, at Eric's PA. So we wanted to say hello to you. So
nice. Thank you.
I didn't mean to diss that.
No,
they were just kind of standing off into the wings. So.
Hey, I've got to spend some time with Blake in the woods. He knows what he's doing.
Yeah. He likes his little tactical.
His little tactical knife I made.
Yeah.
Yes.
We just took it out on Saturday. We went out, which was really interesting too. We don't have to jump into that, but it is weird because we kind of did an afternoon hike in the Kettle Moraine, and it's always one of these hard things. Is you always go by those feelings, and I know feelings isn't really evidence per se, but it's generally when you have that feeling of just being watched. And I know these areas like the back of my hand just going out there, but we came across a fresh birch that just kind of fell over. It was still green. You could still see the ball root. Didn't hear it fall, but it was weird because I'm like, it didn't look dead. It didn't look old, to be pushed over the path. And if there was a strong wind, it seemed like there were so many trees protecting that one tree because there's so many bigger trees in the Kettle Moraine. I didn't know how it got singled out, but it was unique because I've only run across like 2 trees over a path before, and I don't know when it happened or how you can actually determine it. I went to the branch that the top part of the tree, and I was able to break the branch, and it was still moist. It was still kind of green. It had leaves and everything, so it was just kind of unique to us.
That's awesome. Well, that kind of reason the other, and then we're going to be a free for all from after this point. So for the new guys, how do you pick a location? What environmental factors do you look for? And commonality. We're looking at 3 different parts of the country. Cliff being on the West Coast, Steve and I on the East Coast, Jay, you in the middle. What do we look for when you say, hey, this is a spot I'm going to go? You don't have that historical, usually sometimes I'll take the medium with me and she'll kind of point, some things out, or, you'll get those, not always those reports, but what says, I want to go check this area. What are you looking for? Are you looking for swamp? Are you looking for certain trees, certain vegetation? What draws you to an area? Or do you just stumble and say, hey, this is really cool. I want to go for a hike. And if it comes across, and that's where I want to go. We'll start down with Cliff there in the corner. And what draws you to an area that's not a historic site?
Food, water, and cover are basically the 3 that I look for. That's true no matter where in the country or, in fact, the world that you're dealing with. A lot of the rest of it it depends on the environment in which the habitat is, I guess. And the Pacific Northwest is problematic because darn near everywhere is good Bigfoot habitat. It really is. There's water everywhere. There's cover everywhere. It's ridiculous here. So you have to really narrow it down quite a bit. Out east, it's a little easier in some ways because of the deforestation. Like in Pennsylvania, for example. We found them by looking for the historical sightings and whatnot in big chunks of forest, like maybe 3 by 7 miles or something. And then you look at that spot, there's all sorts of avenues, green belts going out of it, connecting to other ones. So you kind of look at seasonal patterns for where sightings occur in those sort of places. In places like the Southern California mountains or in Arizona and in certain places in New Mexico, you look for water. Where is there going to be water most of the time, because that's the thing that is most lacking in that area. So it's kind of like food, water, cover. And if one of those is not plentiful, where's that? That's what you want to look for the most part.
Right.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Steve.
No, go ahead.
No, go ahead, Steve.
No, I insist.
God, you guys are like those gophers on Looney Tunes, man.
I know, right?
After you.
Well, actually, part of the green belt in Wisconsin. Cliff, you were here in 2016 when they do the Beer Brought in Bigfoot episode on finding Bigfoot, and you were doing your own solo investigation when we were up there at the town hall. You were in central part, right? If I'm correct.
I think so. Gosh,
yeah.
That 9-year stretch of finding Bigfoot is one big mushy. So it's hard for me to. I believe so. Yeah.
Right, because you were with the Dobkeys, and because
they're great, by the way, they're a lot of fun.
They are, and basically that's where the southern unit of the Kettle Moraine is just one big green belt going through the state of Wisconsin up to the Great North Woods and then up to Michigan, which is just explodes. But it is the same way. And I'm looking at the environment. The kettles are more of a impression instead of mountains. It seems like they're inverted, caused by the glacial, that created the Great Lakes. And you're talking about lakes, little springs, food aplenty. That's kind of where I'm looking at it, to where I'd say this would be a perfect habitat for Bigfoot to thrive in.
Right.
So that's exactly where I would look, where I started looking. I haven't quite gotten that far north, but I'm kind of staying in one section, and I've just been monitoring these sections constantly for the past 7 years. So I'm hoping to of course, learn more from it. But that's what I was looking for. So go ahead, Steve. I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Now, it's funny because in New York, we have both. We have both those deforested areas, like you go down to where the Appalachians mountain range begins. That's in a lot of areas that's deforested or becoming deforested. But then you have that big swath in the middle of the state called the Adirondack State Forest, which is just, acres and acres to, I think 6 million acres. So yeah, it's really a lot of cover. And again, what I say is not necessarily cover, but remoteness. You're going to have the remoteness, the water and the food source, obviously. And, you look at a community like Whitehall, if you look at a lot of their sightings, there aren't sightings downtown Whitehall, but it's all around the outskirts and what surrounds the outskirts. The Adirondack State Forest to the west, the Green Mountain Forest to the east. And it's just the perfect storm there.
I'd like to add two things real fast, and before I forget, because I'll forget. Number one, I'm not sure I agree with the remoteness. I agree with you, not going to be downtown, but at the same time, where I live at least, they're right outside of town, like right outside of town. Down here, there's a river, and they're on the other side. That's how close they are. People get shocked when I say that sightings happen in Oxbow Park, which is right on the edge of the suburbs.
I agree with you on that, Cliff. Just by saying that, where I'm researching, I've actually caught a car driving by not too far. I mean, I'm in the middle of the Kettle Moraine, but you do have roads going through it, and I do believe they're right there because I've experienced rocks getting pelted at me. So
that's what I mean. That's where they're being seen, but is that where they're living? Is what I'm saying. Is they gotta have a remote area to live in.
Maybe. Yeah, I'm not sure.
Otherwise,
stuff,
Yeah, and then again, the population density of what I mean, remoteness, like living outside of Whitehall, New York, is remote.
I guess that is really remote.
Yeah. I don't mean like nowhere near like suburbia, like Albany or the greater Albany, Troy, Schenectady areas, which are the Tri-Cities.
Yeah,
but that's what I mean by remoteness.
I've had reports though in what are they called? Where like every house is a cookie cutter or the other, like new developments, and there's all these houses that are and like that's been here. There's actually been sightings in those.
Oh yeah.
So, but I think that instead. Perhaps it's more of a access to remote areas as opposed to being remote.
Right.
That's it. But and something else. I almost forgot the first.
Go ahead. I'm gonna bring Joe in here with us.
Oh, here goes the neighborhood again.
There's somebody. I'll say it very, very quickly. When you're faced with an area where everywhere is good, like in swaths of New York, Wisconsin, or out here in the Pacific Northwest. Then you gotta like sharpen your pencil even more, so to speak. You really have to like, okay, what would they want? And I think the answer there that most Bigfooters overlook is strategic terrain. They are extremely strategic. And so you want to look for overlooks, choke points, hidey holes, quick escapes, places to not leave footprints, places to warm themselves without being seen. And the list goes on and on. How they live and the strategy they use to survive. Those are the things you need to look for when everywhere is good.
So you want to take that Army Ranger with you when you go out there to kind of look for that stuff, huh?
He will be hopelessly outclassed. It doesn't.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
But he'll recognize the techniques. Yeah, a good friend of mine, Mel Scahan, a Yakima gentleman friend of mine, Bigfooter out there on the reservation. He, I believe, I remember he took a Navy SEAL out with him to track one that he had been tracking, and the Navy SEAL's comment was like, "This is naturally tracking it. This is naturally walking in the way that it took me 3 years how to walk. This is doing it anyway." Crazy. So I'm confident that those Rangers or whatever would see what they have learned in what they're observing. But again, they're going to be hopelessly outclassed. I mean, nothing against the training. It's just a matter of our own species.
Yeah, I've got a guy on my team that he had multiple run-ins with a Mapinguari in South America while he was stationed down there. And definitely interesting to go in the woods with him. So it's good to hear that's looking for those choke points, those things. Do you guys see a lot with Kate? And welcome, Joe.
Hey, Joe. Howdy, guys.
How's it going, brother?
Howdy.
Been out with us for a couple of investigations, and another gentleman that I reach out to when I have some questions, and cryptid guy, paranormal, and Bigfooter. And please, at any time, Joe, jump in on anything that we have. So right now we're kind of talking about locations. What's the coolest spot you guys have been to? What's for Bigfoot or for cryptid? I mean, we kind of got to now I really can get into the cryptid thing. I was kind of waiting for Joe to really give the twist. Cliff and Steve, I know you guys have both been over and looked for the Loch Ness Monster. Joe and Jay, I know you guys are Dogman guys as well as Bigfoot.
Well, it's kind of hard. That's very easy when you have Bray Road, 13 minutes from where you live, to be able to patrol it all the time. But yeah, I mean, I've had two strange sightings that I really can't tell you what they were. They just seemed out of place, and even a daytime sighting just within trees. River Bray Road, like any rural road out here, it just looks like a country road with farms. It's all private owned by second, third generation farmers, so you can't get out and look. But sometimes you can stop your car and take a look around, and saw something there during the day, right around 1 o'clock in the afternoon on April 2014, and it was right on the tree line, and it was kind of auburn in color, which was different for that time of year because everything was still brown. There was no greenery yet, and my wife was driving because I just wanted to observe, and she was about to do a 2-point turn to turn around. I said, "No, drive down there." It was about 150 yards away, maybe 200 yards away, but I could see it. The closer we got to it, it like melted into. When I say melted, I don't know if it melted or dissolved. It didn't move, and it just became one with the woods. And that was the most bizarrest thing I've ever seen on Bray Road. So, but that's a lot of people are going to say, "Is that Dogman?" I don't know. I mean, again, it's like I've never had an up close and personal encounter with a Sasquatch either. So I'm only going by what I saw, what I could document. So
awesome.
I'd like to ask Cliff and Steve what they think of the more and more sightings and encounters with the so-called Dogman, Wolven, cryptid that's been sighted. I want your guys' take on that.
It's one of those things that I hope isn't real, but might be. They scare the hell out of me if they are real, and I think it would fundamentally change camping. Much like if dinosaurs still existed, it would change my camping experience. But at the same time, I don't see an ecological niche for them, and I've never seen any good evidence either. So if they are real, I don't think the people, let me say it start by this. A long time ago, I thought Dogman sightings were just misidentified Sasquatches. And then it turns out that a good friend of mine, actually a relative of mine at the time, told me about his sighting. And this guy's law enforcement, like super high level law enforcement, federal plus, etc. And he had goosebumps. So he wasn't lying to me. I'm completely confident. Then it turns out that I know another guy who saw one of these things too. So I don't think that the witnesses are lying, but I don't see an ecological niche for these things. And like I said, I've never seen any good evidence for it. So there's a lot of weird things in this universe. You know, the universe is not only weirder than you think; it's actually weirder than you can think. So this Dogman thing, I don't think is a biological deal, although it strongly resembles one. It might be something that is truly paranormal, whatever that means. You know, so I don't have much to say about it except that there's something going on. I know a couple of solid witnesses who I have complete faith in, but again, I've never seen evidence. I've just heard stories. So,
yeah, Steve, what do you think?
Well, I tend to agree with Cliff. I mean, you would think that if there was a species, I mean, obviously, if it's not paranormal and it's biological, there would have to be a breeding population of these things, and they would definitely attract a lot of attention because, you know, as it is, you get a wolf pack or a coyote pack in a particular neighborhood, you know, it's going to cause a lot of ecological damage. You know, pets missing, you know, havoc. So, you know, I tend to believe that it's possible it's a paranormal thing. It may be a manifestation of something, and nothing cryptid at all. It's more on the paranormal side.
Yeah, you know, because I'm always curious. You know, you could see, you know, again, consider the source of YouTube or any video up there of Sasquatch, fake or, you know, real, fake. You'll never know. But how come you don't see the hoaxes of the Dogman? You know, I mean, I'm just saying that's the part that's really strange is people talk about their
right. It's hard to make a suit.
Yeah.
Or yeah. Well, okay. I just figured maybe they would, you know, a lot of Bigfoot hoax, you know, try to walk around, extend the arms to try to look that way, and everybody still will deem it fake. But you know, I'm just saying it's one of those things that I always found curious on the lack of evidence.
Yeah. It seems like they've been coming out more and more, though. It seems like more people are encountering these creatures. As far as what I'm, you know, researching. And as far as pets missing, pets are starting to get missed. Livestock's getting slaughtered. Last year in Kentucky, as a matter of fact, some donkeys, some llamas, on a couple of farms in an area, were slaughtered. I mean, just clawed to death. You know, they have seen prints. There's those three-toed prints, and I know Bigfoot's been sighted with three toes too in the past. But the claw marks look, you know, definitely canine.
Yeah, there are no legitimate Bigfoot tracks with three toes.
Yeah.
What was that?
Those are hoaxes or misidentifications, or in very rare circumstances, situations when not all five toes hit the ground. Because all mammals have 5 digits, even dogs. You know, they have one in the back. So there are no Sasquatch tracks with 3 toes that are legitimate.
And on that note, I saw
even those southern tracks. Those southern tracks back in the day, those southern tracks, I kind of equated to just the Bigfoots not having 5 toes because of the conditions that they're in, like the mangrove swamps and you know, the swamplands down there, and they get their toes caught, so they have more of a web or a more a foot with 3 toes that could, you know, not get caught. That's what I always thought, that the southern Bigfoot had more of a 3-toed print.
Yeah, but one of the things MK Davis did, he's done some good work, and he's done some stuff that I don't think is good work, and you know, I know him. I have no problem with him personally. I want to put that out there. But one of his earlier things that he did was fantastic, is he tracked down the fake stompers that made the Honey Island swamp monster footprints, and those were alligator tracks on the bottom of somebody's shoes, and those are that's what gave rise, as well as the 3-toed Legend Boggy Creek
displayed
fake. So.
In 2008, I went down to, I actually had the opportunity to go down to Bishopville, South Carolina, to look at a lizard man sighting, and they were three-toed tracks, especially dating back to the 80s. And I met with the sheriff at the time, Liston Truesdale, who had the casts that were cast in the 80s of this, and they were three-toed tracks. And it was very, in measuring them, every single toe splay of the tracks were the same. So it just told me they were just stompers, and you could actually, in one track, you could even see like a doweling mark. So you could very well tell. So yeah, three-toed tracks, you know, especially if you think of a Sasquatch being the size of it, just, you know, ergonomically, it doesn't work very well.
So for the novice, you're basically, when you're looking at those tracks, or you're looking at any set of tracks, you're looking for some kind of dimorphism. You're looking for some change due to substrate or the material that they're stepping in. So you're going to have a difference in foot. You're not going to, it's a soft item. It's not a hard item. It's going to get that little bit of change, you know. And, you know, that's like a question kind of leading into Cliff. How did you end up going into prints instead of vocals or hair or something that?
Like the same way I do almost everything in my life, accidentally. I have a slight interest in something and I pursue it. And next thing I know, I'm drowning in it. Back in the 90s, early 90s, when the internet was brand new and shiny, and Dr. Grover Krantz was selling Sasquatch footprint casts with a guy named Ira Walters, who actually, we have some mutual friends. Henry Franzoni was here a couple weeks ago, and he was telling me about how he knew Ira and all that sort of stuff. And I don't agree with Henry on most things, but he's a lovely man, et cetera. And we're good friends. I'm not one of those guys that has to agree with people to like them. Actually, I really prefer to hang out with people who see things differently than I do, so I can learn something. I don't like speaking to myself in a bubble of mirrors. But anyway, I got my first cast from that website. It was actually a first generation copy, I believe, of the Patterson Gimlin right foot. I still have it today, and or I might have got the knuckle print. I got a Freeman knuckle print off that same site. But nonetheless, it was one of those casts, and then I stumbled across another one somehow, and now here I am with some upwards towards, if you count the fakes in my collection, you know, 350, 400 cats, like a whole lot of stuff, man. Wow. My garage is kind of overwhelming, and I'm making more. I just got a new cast. There was a really nice there's a pretty mediocre photograph of a possible Sasquatch from West Virginia that hit the news last October, maybe, or November. Turns out there's footprints associated with it. I just got the original cast for that from the museum, and so stuff comes all the time. And I cast a footprint last Sunday. Yeah, last Sunday, if somebody found a line of tracks up on Mount Hood, I went up there and cast it. So the collection's ridiculous and you know, self-replicating.
Does anybody ever bring in hair to you at all? Any hair samples?
Yeah. I've been collecting hair samples for a long time, actually. And about 2 years ago, when I was out in maybe last year, I don't know, last year before, I don't remember. Again, my sense of time is very elastic, you know, but that's why I write things down, because I don't have to remember them. But I was out in Pocatello doing a gig out there with Jeff, with Dr. Meldrum. And so I went over to Jeff's lab for a day, I think the day before the gig, and I hung out with him for a few hours in there. We went over stuff. And I brought my entire hair collection, you know, to him, and we sat down at the microscope, and he kind of gave me a nice, you know, couple-hour lesson on hair analysis under the microscope, what to look for. Like, there's only a small number of things to look for, you know, the first microscopic analysis. So, and of my 18 samples that I gave him, I had one possible hair that might be from a Sasquatch that fit Dr. Henner Fehrenbach's golden standard, and that was from Trumbull County, Kentucky, collected by Tom Shea. Tom, if you don't know who Tom is, he's by far one of the best Bigfoot investigators ever to live, and he found these hair samples in a line of Sasquatch tracks, which of course he also cast. So yeah, and that was he matched the golden standard. I have it in the microscope slide, and I plan to make an exhibit about it in the museum here.
And that's a pretty good published article then on the fair. I know I've heard the name, but finding that particular,
I'll send it over to you, Mike.
Gotcha. All right.
Well, actually, did he actually publish like a journal article on that, Steve?
Huh?
Steve, did Henner actually publish an article, like a journal article, or is it just that stuff that's like on the BFRO site? Like, do you know?
I had some. I don't know if I got it off the BFRO website, but I know I have a way old. I mean, it's in that big binder over there. I mean, I got it back in like 2001.
Yeah,
So,
okay, because I'm looking for what Henner's written up beyond the BFRO stuff. If you find something, I would love to. If you could forward it to me too, I'd appreciate
sure.
it. Thank you. By the way, I know I said earlier I don't join groups. That's because I can work with individuals, and Steve's my go-to guy in New York. Whatever that New York, Vermont and stuff, he's my first call. I want you to know that he's not only a good friend, and a damn fine investigator, and I'm proud to call him like on my team. So
Thank you, sir.
I'm on his team. I don't give a damn as long as we're working together. I don't care.
That's it.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
Plus, Cliff, you found that string of tracks. Remember, you have one of the other really great finds of that string of tracks. One of the longest string of tracks in recent history, other than the Botsberg tracks.
They turned out to be fake. It took me about a year and a half to figure that out, but I did. And that's one of the cool things about what I do. Like when very long story short, I'll just kind of keep it short, but I saw some anomalies with the tracks that didn't sit well with me, but everything else added up beautifully. There was differentiation, but only vertically, not horizontally, like no horizontal toe splay. And that was concerning to me. Okay. So I kind of just put red flags, So turns out that same year, these guys tried to pull a hoax on me down in LB, Washington, but I figured that one out pretty quick. Even on site, looking at the tracks in the ground, I'm thinking those don't look right. But my friends, the other Bigfoot investigators that were there, were saying, no, I think this is a real deal and whatever else. Turns out they're not. A guy named Aaron Swepston called it in. He's like hangs out on some Facebook page. Yeah, he called it in to me. And I've met Aaron since then. All is forgiven. I'm fine with it. He still don't know who put the tracks in the ground. And Aaron said he wouldn't tell me because people were threatening to burn his house down with his family inside of it for having been involved in it. So people take things far too seriously, right?
Way too serious.
Yeah, man.
Yeah.
It cost me a couple $100 in a couple days, but I hung out with Aaron, had a beer with him. Everything's fine, man. But anyway, I asked him, like, hey, man, you don't happen to know anybody with a fake pair of stompers I can borrow to do some experiments, do you? And he made me a pair. He made, I don't know, I mean, he let me borrow them. He made a pair and let me borrow them for like a year. So I ran around in all sorts of substrate and whatever. And I documented my tracks, not only with photographs, but also in casts. And the anomalies that I saw in the London tracks, I found in my own fake tracks. And so game over, period, right? Because I am an amateur scientist. I don't feel Bigfoots are real. I know they're real because the evidence tells me so. And science is not. I know a lot of people. There's this ridiculous anti-intellectual, anti-science wave going through the country. It's asinine. I'm sorry to say that, and if you feel that way, too bad. But it's ridiculous because there's a misconception about science. Science is not some guarded thing of knowledge where I'm going to know something you don't know. That's not what science is. Science is a process of finding out what's true. You think something's true, you've tried to find evidence to support the truth, right? And the most successful thing you can do in science is prove yourself wrong. Scientists are always trying to prove themselves wrong. And you know what? I had some suspicions about the tracks. I was lucky enough to replicate those things in an experiment multiple times. I proved myself wrong. That is a victory, not a failure.
Yeah, I was going to say, did you feel good about that?
Yeah.
I actually, it was last year in the kennel, I brushed up again a plant, looked on the sleeve of my shirt, and it looked like mangy hair. I mean, like almost like human hair, but it was knotted and it was just hanging on me, but it was dark. So I was able to get it and put it into a nice, paper envelope. And then when I used my digital microscope, looking at it the next day, not the next day, but it was like a few weeks after that, I kept it safe. I'm like, all right, here it is. I haven't pulled it out since that night. I'm going to do it. So I put it underneath. Sure enough, got close enough to it, and it was frayed fabric from either my backpack, but that again, that was a victory to me because I found it and it looked promising. I mean, it looked like hair that I've never seen. I mean, good 7 inches of it. So I'm like, I think I might have something. I felt great about it. But after debunking it, Cliff, just like you, I felt it was a reward. I did my due diligence on it.
Well, you got to ask yourself, are you looking for the truth or are you looking to be put on a pedestal so others can look at you as a Bigfooter?
Right.
Yeah.
Just
you're looking for
the truth.
Because there's no room in this field for the other type of person.
No.
Exactly.
No.
Yeah. It's,
go ahead, Steve,
I mean, as an investigator, and you said not only as a scientist.
Oh, we froze him.
Go ahead, Steve. Keep talking.
Steve, keep talking.
Okay, yeah, I just saw everybody go blink. Investigator, as a trained investigator, at the end of the day, if you can solve something like, okay, this is what that is, that's the satisfaction right there too. It's like, okay, this is not what we thought it was, and we can close the book on it. But I also wanted to say what a wonderful technology helps. I mean, nowadays you can take a microscope, put a hair sample under it, get a digital microscope, take a picture of that, and send the picture out rather than send the hair sample out. It's just a wonderful, wonderful little medium there.
I got one of those. Actually, we have a question from the audience. Angie is asking, "What do you look for in a hair sample?"
I want to hear Cliff, because you got the amateur scientist approach to that. I'd like to know as well. I've listened to Dr. Jeff as well. When he was looking, I think he was telling me that at the PA conference. But I'd like to hear a great explanation of what you would look for.
Well, it's not that much, actually. Really, it's kind of simple. Like 4 or 5 things. I'll go through them. I hope I don't forget any of them. First of all, when backlit, it always shines red, reddish, brownish red, blackish red, something red. And you're going to note, Steve can, I'm sure, back this up too with his sighting reports. No matter what color an animal appears to be, a Sasquatch appears to be, if there's backlighting to it, it shines a little bit red. Okay, always. And there's a very good evolutionary reasons for that. The same reason orangutans are red. I can go into that or keep on going. It's up to you guys. The second thing that you look for is it doesn't taper. Which is interesting because a lot of people think, oh, well, if it tapers, that means it was never cut, right? Because human hairs are cut and it's very, very sharp, a sharp angle under the microscope. But actually, primate hair, ape hair, and that includes our hair, by the way, because we are apes, doesn't taper. It basically goes more or less parallel to the very end and then has a blunt end. If you have the end, you can still tell it wasn't cut, but it's not a tapered end. Another thing that I remember Dr. Meldrum talking to me about is, of course, the medulla. It's very, very, I mean, everybody knows about this, but I'll say it anyway in case you don't. The medulla is like the center shaft inside the hair. It's like the pencil lead inside of a pencil, kind of, that sort of thing. Turns out, by the way, that's also where any DNA material that might be extracted is. So you'll see why that complicates our DNA quest here for Bigfoot in a moment. But Sasquatch hair apparently is, the medulla is either absent or fragmentary at best. So we're looking at hairs that like either don't have that or have such a sketchy, small, fragmentary medulla that is observable under microscope as such, as fragmentary. Now, of course, if you're trying to get DNA out of a hair and the only place in the hair that it can be found is missing or almost not there at all, that complicates things quite a bit. And it's not unheard of either, by the way, because red-headed humans, also have that same characteristic, either fragmentary or missing medulla. So those are the 3: blunt ends, non-tapered, reddish shine, lacking medulla. Those are the big 4, I guess, what it is.
Yeah. And if I'd like to jump into it, is that it's a misconception too that, we call it, a lot of times somebody say, I found a hair. You got to look at coloring too, because a lot of times you'll see you'll see different in coloration. And you got to understand that primates have hair. All the rest of the critters have fur. And so that actual sample you're getting is actually a piece of fur. It's not actually hair.
Yeah, and the difference is the layering thing. Yeah. So define fur for us, I guess.
Well, the thing that I caught on my arm actually looked like it had knots in it, almost like, when you hear of different reports that the hair didn't look all flowy, like combed, groomed, it just had knots, or that's kind of what it looked like to me. So that's why I grabbed it, placed it away, and didn't touch it. But
sure.
Yeah. But I was looking for all these with my digital microscope, and at first glance, I solved it pretty quick. So, but still, it's good to know.
And also, may I also tell people that if they're out there collecting hair samples and stuff like that, please wear latex gloves. Please put them in an envelope. Do not put them in plastic. Mm-hmm. DNA degrades in plastic. And you got to understand that very end there may have a follicle in it, and that is where you'll find most of your DNA. Your good DNA is in a follicle.
Yeah, you can get nuclear DNA out of that. Yeah. Whereas in the medulla, you only get the mitochondrial DNA.
Right.
Yeah. By the way, hair and fur. Hair is what you have. Fur, it comes in layers. An overcoat, and then there's a wavy undercoat. And that wavy undercoat traps hair, and it acts like kind of like a wetsuit does. Traps and warms it up. So if you have a squirrely sort of looking hair or whatever, it almost certainly is not a Sasquatch, unless maybe it came from the pubic area. It's hard to say, but like almost certainly probably not. No, because hair shape varies dramatically from where you get it on the body as well. Yeah. But if you have both of those in one sample, it's not Sasquatch.
Yep.
Okay. It's a little off on the topic, but what do you guys think of Skinwalker Ranch? You guys watch that? Know about Skinwalker Ranch, and Steve and I, we've talked about it in the past, but anybody have any thoughts on that?
I've heard there's something.
The show's a little bit dramatic.
I don't believe so. Yeah.
It's another show.
I haven't seen it. Don't know anything about it.
Yeah, we're the different paranormal. We're out in Utah of UFOs, paranormal, cryptids within this land. Actually, Linda Godfrey, we have an area up here off Bray Road that's really close to it.
She was on the show.
What's that?
She was on the show. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. So I mean, again, I don't know. I haven't been out there to experience it, so
Well, the way I look at it is that, again, it's not my area of expertise, but there seems to be several areas of high strangeness on this planet. We've talked for years about the Bermuda Triangle having strange magnetic effects and electrical effects. Bridgewater Triangle, just to name a couple. So it wouldn't surprise me that, maybe there's an area out there right around centered on the Skinwalker Ranch. So it's entirely possible.
Yeah, they've encountered a lot of electrical anomalies, phones going crazy, electrical equipment that they bring out with batteries fully charged drain immediately, magnetic effects on your brain, people passing out. UFOs have been sighted. The show is a little bit on the dramatic side. I wish it was done in the vein of Ancient Aliens, a little bit more of a docu style instead of the drama style. It's more like The Curse of Oak Island. It's done in that production.
That's the same production team, I think.
Well,
it's
Joe,
the same characters too.
At least they're not blaming Carol Baskin.
Okay, this is an inside question. I'm a big fan of you guys. Has there been any evidence of an adult Sasquatch being able to climb trees?
There's been sighting reports of them jumping down from trees.
Yeah.
Okay. But evidence, that depends what you define as evidence. There's stories.
Right.
But
yeah. My son was freaked out over the weekend because he was looking through his binocular, and he stopped almost. I mean, you know who you're hiking with. It's my son. And he goes, right there. He's dead. Monkey, tree. He couldn't get the words out. And that's when I'm like pulling up the camera. I'm looking. I don't see what he's seeing, but he was actually shaken. And this was like, we were already out there for almost an hour and a half, 2 hours. And it was fine. But so, and then it made me think, it's like, it's a great question. Has there been any evidence? I can't tell you if there's been evidence, but
I can tell you something, pretty factual, that as primates, we all climb trees when we're young.
True.
Because we're learning our hands and feet. And that's why even with us, they put monkey bars in parks, because we like to climb as kids. So, same thing with gorillas, and gorillas eventually become landfall because they get heavier and less. And as they get older, you get less limber. Boy, don't I know that.
This kind of goes with it. With the metatarsal break in their feet, is that so they can grab branches easier for swinging? I'm not.
It evolved from it. Actually, is a better way to say it. It's an evolutionary byproduct of us having been brachiators in the past. Brachiation is traveling in trees, and so basically, like if this is a tree, you got to angle it right. If that's a tree trunk, well, let me go back here. That's a tree trunk, okay? Well, it's hard to do backwards, but and this is the foot, right? And then that would be the leg, right, coming up. If you could bend the foot in the middle, that would give this a closer angle to the body being up that way, right?
Mhm.
Yeah, so otherwise it would be straight out like humans can't bend their foot there, but every other ape species can, and most hominin species could too, by the way. But hominins are human ancestors. So that wouldn't be very good. But if you could do that and keep a big portion of the foot, the entire forepart of the foot, in contact with the tree to maximize friction, you'd be a better climber. And then your leg would go off that direction up to your body, and you could hold the tree up on top. So that's where the mid-tarsal flexibility of the foot comes from. Humans, it turns out, are a very, very special kind of ape for a lot of reasons, but one of which is that we have a very well-defined longitudinal arch. It's the arch in the foot that you're familiar with. Neanderthals had a much lower arch. There's some indication that Heidelbergensis, their predecessors, also had a small arch. I just read a paper that Homo naledi also has a very unexaggerated but small arch, but that gives insight to behaviors, because humans develop that arch to absorb the shock and give a little extra spring to their step while doing long distance persistence hunting on the savannas of Africa, basically, and because persistence hunting is a strategy used by human ancestors and, frankly, cheetahs and all sorts of other things where, hey, that goat looks delicious, I'm going to chase it, and when I'm tired, I tag team you in, and you chase it while I rest. And we'll just keep doing that back and forth for 4 to 6 hours. The goat never gets a rest. It eventually collapses out of exhaustion, and we get dinner. That's why we developed the arch in the foot. So we're actually a special kind of ape in that way. But all the other ape species, we would have that as well if we didn't do that, because our ancestors did when they were still brachiating.
So
I actually have a follow-up question to that.
Go ahead, Steve, and then I'll go for the next one after that.
So there have been reports of people seeing Sasquatch going into 4x4 mode, or to a gallop where they're actually using their hands. I don't know if you've heard those reports, and I'm just wondering if at that point their heel never touches the ground and they're just using the front end of their foot.
Well, that would serve the same thing, right? Because instead of being vertical, they're just doing it horizontally, but their foot is perfectly made for that.
And I think that may also explain some partial tracks.
Yeah, possibly. Yeah, very possibly. Yeah.
Okay, Mike.
So going down this path, what do you guys think it is on that? I mean, I think most of us are on the flesh and blood path. Maybe some are not. And you go ahead and speak up if you guys, go down the other path. But where do you think we're going? Background, where on that family tree do you think we're sitting? I tend to look at things a little different. I got a background in archaeology and anthropology. I also spent a couple of years working in a zoo. What do you?
And they let you out?
Yeah, volunteer work. They sent me on another page instead. So what do you guys think?
Who do you want to go?
Joe?
Who wants to go first?
So I think it's a flesh and blood creature. Do I think they have abilities beyond what we know as far as adaptations through years of being in the forest? Yeah. I think they can do things like infrasound. I think they can do things as far as camouflage that we still don't know how they can hide. When you're living in the woods your whole life, my best line is predator line. It uses the jungle. They use the forest. They use the jungles everywhere around the world. And they're masters of their domain, man, So I think they can that's why we can't see them so much, They can hide beyond anybody's business, and they leave hair, they leave scat, you can hear them, they're seen, their strength is known, the trees they break, the things they build. It's definitely a creature that is existing in our plane.
And I mean, you're down investigating on Long Island too, aren't you? And down near the city, so you're down near populated areas.
You wanna hear a funny one? I was just I was just in Long Branch, New Jersey 2 weeks ago, and I saw this one print. Okay, it was really odd. It was a bare footprint. It was in a guy's backyard. There's been sightings in that Freehold, New Jersey area for years. I mean, going back through the 70s. There's a waterway close to this guy's house. He came out in the morning and there was a print right there, right in his garden. And there was deer in his garden. He never sees deer in his garden. I went down there. I got the report on Monday. I was down there that Saturday. The print was pretty much, he didn't have a cast. He didn't do anything like that. And he put a piece of cardboard on it. It had rained, and it was, you know. Anyway, the pictures he had were incredible. I was like, it's definitely a print. You know, was it him? He was telling me it wasn't him. You know, I went through this. I went through everything as far as talking to this guy about you know, I'm losing my train of thought here. We went out behind his house. There's an alleyway for a school, for God's sakes. And then there's a strip of woods going to the railroad tracks. We go out to the railroad tracks, and now there's a creek. It's about 10 feet wide. It goes down about 7-8 feet. Easily something to walk through this area, you know. I found deer bones. He didn't find them. I found a ripped apart snapping turtle. He didn't find that. I did. I found other deer bones along this track line. Yeah, deer get smashed by trains all the time too. So I didn't discount that also. The guy was very forthcoming, and he was very, very honest. I didn't find him to be lying to me, put it that way. He hasn't called me back and he hasn't seen anything, and he hasn't heard anything. He just had this one track in his yard the night that he had deer in the back. Semi-urban. It definitely wasn't totally city, but definitely weird to find a barefoot print like that in the guy's yard, where he was very animate and it wasn't him. I was intrigued, but I left it at that. It's, you know, something that happened. And and like I said, he hasn't called me back, because I've had witnesses call me back constantly. Oh, here it is again. Oh, it's back here again. Oh, yeah. And it's like, and they're just doing it for, and I'm sure, Steve, you've encountered people like that too, that just constantly have Bigfoot on the brain, and they're constantly calling you back. And, oh, now that, you know, there's people watching me. I've had a guy from Jersey do that to me a couple times. I really was going to call the cops on him because he was just annoying me so much. But you know, it's going back to whether it's flesh and blood or something different. I still think it. I'm gearing. I know it's a creature that's in our existence, in our plane, and I just think they have really, really enhanced abilities from adaptation over the years. So anybody else can take it from here.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. And one of my first encounters in the Kettle Moraine, after hearing some vocals that I've never heard before and still couldn't match, was February in 2014, when we came across these 17-foot snow indentations in the snow. I mean, they went over the beaten path. You know, it was snowing that day, so there was plenty full of snow, 1-2 foot drifts here and there. And after looking at them, that's what I was trying to do at first too, is I was trying to debunk it. I'm like, there's no way that these big prints, somebody's out here, somebody's messing with us. And so I carefully looked to see if there was any snow disturbed on the side after looking at it, trying to use my amateur investigation skills. And then when I finally documented those and followed them, I followed 12 prints, 53 inches heel to heel, almost in a tightrope fashion. Again, I didn't understand and learn all that. But it did come kind of to a clearing, and what I mean kind of, there was a fallen oak with a little bit of snow on it, and I couldn't tell if it was the front part of the foot or the heel, but there was disturbance of snow and then nothing else. And the closest tree had to have been about 20 feet away in every direction. So I thought, all right, really, who's hoaxing me here? Where did it go? Something physically had to have left it, but then, where did they go? Exactly. I'm saying either it jumped 20 feet, which, again, just learning, didn't know if that was possible, or two, a portal opened up and it walked through, or three, it sprouted wings and flew away, which is even scarier than anything. But still, at this point, I can't explain it. It is physical, definitely physical, but how do these prints just
disappear?
Yeah.
Well, yeah, very interesting comments there. Now, were they? I always. Well, first, to answer Mike's question is, I believe they are a primate, but whether they're pongid or hominin, we don't have that fine definition yet. They may be a branch of their own. They may be completely different, but they're primate. Based on their descriptions: articulate hands and feet, large brain, small snout. And that in itself can tell us a lot of things about what type of creature we're looking for. Infrasound, the interesting thing Joe mentioned, infrasound, is that some of the research I've done, it's very strange that the largest mammals of each genus can use infrasound. The largest cats, the largest whales, they use infrasound. Yep. The elephant. So that's not out of the realm. They have very thick, they're huge necks, thick vocal cords, one would expect. So they definitely would have the interest to do that. As far as their camouflage and stuff, one of the things I always point out to people is the deer crossing the road. It jumps into the bushes. You turn around and look. They're gone. So that's just their natural adaptation. Their camouflage. The reddish brown blends in well with all seasons, with summer, spring, fall, and in fall. Winter not so much, but that's the interesting thing. In this area, we see the pattern of them being in the Adirondacks through the fall, and then as winter tends to have, the sightings pick up on the Vermont side where there's deciduous pine, whereas on this side of the Adirondacks there's a lot of oak, maple, birch. That's the main thing. So they all lose their leaf, their cover from there. So we think, and of course, primates will move to different areas depending on food source and cover. And that's why the Aboriginal Native Americans did that as well in the plains. They would move, have summer homes, winter homes. Now, the question I have for Jay would be on those tracks, because one of the things that came up a lot was trackways. And some people we're showing, I've seen pictures of trackways where every single foot is right in front of the other. Mm-hmm. And that's not actually normal for how, at least us, we don't ambulate heel toe. We ambulate. Right. So you should have some left deviation, some right deviation.
Yeah, it's called straddle, by the way. And that whole tight, technically, if you're documenting it, it's called straddle. But that whole tightrope walk thing for the Sasquatch has been far overblown. Mm-hmm. There is a tendency to be much more in line than our own. And it almost certainly has to do with the center of gravity and how they walk, but to say it's like that straight down that's almost never
exactly. And just learning back then, like I said, is I was late to the party looking for Squatch, and seeing it, I didn't really, that's how come I actually thought they were faked, is because of the way the left, right were, like you said, the straddle then. And I didn't at that point. I figured you couldn't cast it because it was snow. I mean, I've learned so much since then. But so I always say rookie mistake. Took some photos, measurements and video of it, but that's all I have. But again, when it really came down to it, it was when they disappeared. Because I was thinking, if somebody's hoaxing this, how did they do this?
Two quick points, and I'll bounce it back to Steve so he can finish his thought there. Yeah. Number one, if you find tracks in the snow that are directly straight in a line, 99 times out of 100, it's an animal hopping through the snow, essentially, because there is no straddle when there's one thing going, right? So that's almost always the case. And second thing, Bob Strain, actually, a great Bigfoot researcher out of California, part of the NAWAC, good friend of mine, love the man. He was telling me once about a trackway he was following in the snow, Sasquatch trackway, and it went to the middle of this field and disappeared, right? And he goes, what? Turns out the thing turned around and walked out in its own footprints, just like a human would do, I might add. But I asked him, did you look closely? He goes, oh yeah, I could see the toes going the opposite way as well. So a lot of these things in snow, especially if there's ambiguity or melting out or anything like that, always consider that these things aren't that different than us in a lot of ways, because we're very apey and they're very human, you know. Sure. And there are a lot of things, you know, and they might walk out in their own footprints because frankly it's easier.
And sure, not to mention the fact that chimps have been known to even cover their tracks.
Oh yeah, sure.
So you know, they're very aware. I mean, primates are forward thinkers. They have abstract thought. They think outside of what they're seeing. They actually, my favorite story was when Jane Goodall was interning. They had put this banana in a pipe, and they put a broomstick next to the pipe, and they wanted to see if the chimp couldn't reach. He tried to reach for the banana. They put, the pipe was too long for the reach. They were looking to see if the chimp would pick up the pole and push it out. Well, on the 13th day, they had just about given up because the chimp acknowledged the pole and was playing with the broomstick handle or whatever and tried. And then all of a sudden, on the 13th day, it walked right in, grabbed the pole, and pushed the banana out, so showing that it had been thinking about the problem outside of the room. And she thought that was amazing. So that's what we're dealing with, is something that can sit there and problem solve and plan, and that's why they remain so elusive, I think.
And that shows great intelligence, because I wouldn't see a cougar or a wolf doing the same thing, you know.
Right.
That's what I say, pure intelligence.
Yeah.
And then you got the bonobos. The bonobos, you want to talk about tree markers and trail markers and all that stuff. The bonobos put trail markers to find the troop at the end of the day. So when they're going through the woods, they know they leave a little patch of leaves near a tree trunk or a rock or something like that, and then they follow the rest of the troop knows where that troop's going to be at the end of the night, at the end of the day, so that they could go meet up with them.
And the rock markers.
Yeah, and let's go back to the infrasound for a second. Tigers stun their prey with infrasound, like they can basically make their deer stand still with the infrasound. Now, do you think if the Bigfoot, which I think they do, is when you get that fear go through you, okay? You get that fear go through and you can't move. Do you think that's the Bigfoot using the infrasound to stun you? I've read a report that a guy in a tent couldn't move. He heard the Bigfoot outside his tent, and it was just like making this vibrating growl type sound. Now, do you think this also comes into play as to why all the creatures, other creatures, go quiet? Your crickets, your frogs, everything else is because they use some sort of infrasound to make everything go quiet.
I think absolutely, because it seems to be a whole culmination of factors. People realize all of a sudden it's really quiet, then they get this creeped out feelings of being watched. I also think that infrasound could be responsible for some of the more paranormal aspects, like it was there and then all of a sudden it was gone. Because infrasound can cause vibration in the eyes, cause vibration in the ears. It can cause people to hear things, give them the impression they're being spoken to. It's all how the body and your own body and the person's own internal.
Ray and Chris, I'm gonna get your stuff up there once Steve's done with his.
And I think that has a lot to do with it. Really think. And then there's the other paranormal aspects. I think there's a part of the brain that goes into the trauma mode. Regret. Where people regress certain thoughts because it was there and then all of a sudden it was gone. And I think really it's part of that is part of brain, a traumatic, your brain is forgetting this because you're seeing something that's not in your system and it's trying to figure it out in the mind, because what we see is perceived and it's really complicated. I mean, we see things but it takes our brains to interpret what we see. So when we see something that's not in our catalog, it kind of causes the brain to go for a little bit, short circuit.
I've got two guys in here. I'll let Cliff answer his, and Craig and Ray, I'm going to jump on your comments there in one quick second, but let's get Cliff's thought on there. And yeah, Chris is on here. He's on Facebook, Ray. So
what do you want me to comment on?
Your thoughts of what it is?
Oh,
I mean, I've heard it quite a few times, but I don't think the audience has. So
it's clearly flesh and blood. And there's, to my knowledge, no evidence beyond citing reports that suggests otherwise, and a ton of evidence that suggests that it's flesh and blood. The arguments I always say are like, okay, if they are UFO riding, paranormal, shape-shifting whatevers, why are they eating roadkill? Why is it that no, and people say, oh, that I guess that's just what they like. That's a cop-out. They could do better than that. On top of that, why is it that their anatomy exactly conforms to what we know about non-human primates and also human ancestors? That should not be the case if they are not evolving here. And it's just that simple, you know. So the evidence is strongly, it's clear as day that these things are obviously flesh and blood. And again, like I said, there's plenty of weird things out there. Who's not to say that one of those weird things isn't masquerading around as a Bigfoot? You know, I'm open to that idea, but Sasquatches are a real biological species. What they are is an interesting question. Everybody jumps on Gigantopithecus because John Green and Grants and Dr. Meldrum and stuff advocate for that, and I think it's a very strong argument. However, the evidence for that is rather scant, I would say. And one of my hobbies, in fact, I probably would have majored in it had I discovered it earlier, is paleoanthropology, the study of human ancestors and the fossils and all that sort of stuff. And so when Dr. Meldrum comes out on expedition, and he and I spent over like weeks together, like in the woods, you know, like just talking about this kind of stuff. I've learned a lot. I had a lot of interesting thoughts. He believes that Giganto is a very strong candidate, and it is because it's the right place, the right time, and the right size. Okay, but he's also been putting out there another possibility that I personally think is more likely, because there's some argument against Giganto. See, Gigantopithecus, we now know because of these protein analyses that were done just a few months ago. It was in the news. You can look it up if you want. We know now for sure that it's in the orang line, the orangutan line. And when you look at the ancestors before and after, like the orangutan does not have brow ridges. You look at their ancestor, Shivapithecus was its name. It also does not have brow ridges. That doesn't mean that, you know, that Giganto did not have brow ridges. It could have evolved that parallelly, I guess maybe was the adverb for that. I'm not sure. But you know, I think that's some suggestion that perhaps they also did not have brow ridges. But yet Sasquatches are very often, if not uniformly, described as having some level of brow ridge. So I think another very likely candidate is probably, well, I'll tell you how I came to my conclusion. But when I look for what Sasquatches could be, I look for what they do and most importantly, what they don't do. Because you look at human ancestors in some sort of way that we have a lot of things in common. And two of the big ones are fire use and tool fashioning and use. Okay. Now, tool use isn't amazing. Crows do it, you know, all sorts of apes do it. Sea otters use tools. It's not a specifically human thing, but fashioning of tools is. Well, that's not even true either. It turns out crows do that sort of stuff too. Crows are amazing. But like, you know, chipping, you know, flint and all that sort of stuff. The tool use, fashioning and use is a pretty huge adaptation. And certainly fire, using and controlling fire, I see both of these adaptations as too valuable to discard once you've obtained them. Okay, so if I look back at the human family tree, which is really more of a bush, actually, all sorts of tendrils and branches going off in all directions, and I look at we know this guy had it for sure. This is the earliest one that we absolutely are 100% positive had those things. It's Homo habilis. Homo habilis, called handyman. That's actually why he got the name, because they figured out he made tools, right? And so we got to look for the last common ancestor with Sasquatches before that, essentially. Is what it comes down to. And before that, you have this big family called the Australopithecines. You guys know about Australopithecus, whether you realize it or not, because you've probably heard about that famous fossil called Lucy. named after Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds, right? She's an Australopithecus afarensis, and she was discovered in 74, if I remember right. And so it turns out the Australopithecines are a very, very big family, but there's two main branches to that family. The gracile sort of thinner form, like Lucy is, there's Australopithecus afarensis, africanus, and a bunch of others. There's also the more robust, thick, strong, squat ones called the robust Australopithecines. They're so different in some ways that they actually have their own genus names sometimes. They can be called Australopithecus robustus, or they could also be referred to as Paranthropus. And I think Sasquatches are Paranthropocines, I think is the word. I think they're Paranthropus, essentially, because what Paranthropus is a Sasquatch that's 4 or 5 feet tall. There are no other differences that I can detect, between Sasquatches and location and time. I guess I got to put those in because somebody will go, but so if you take a Paranthropus and you make it grow a couple feet taller, you have a Sasquatch, period. And growing a couple feet taller isn't that big of an evolutionary stretch if these things, number one, radiated out of Africa, and we have no fossil evidence of them out of Africa, and number two, went north. If they went north into the Himalayas and up into Russia, they would encounter colder climates. And what happens when an animal lives in a colder climate is that over generations, they get larger. It's called Bergman's rule. You can look it up. It's about body size and heat retention and all that sort of stuff. But bigger animals live in the north. You can, look at polar bears, right? So if Paranthropus radiated out of Africa and went northward, that would put them at the right time. Well, certainly the right time, the right place, because Russia's right up, skip a rock over to the Bering Strait and you hit Alaska. And of course, the size is a big one, but they would get bigger naturally through Bergman's rule. So I think what we're looking at are a relic population of Paranthropus. And by the way, I didn't make that up. Turns out a guy all the way back in the early 70s, there was this dude who just died this past August, and I never had a chance to meet him. I'm devastated. His name was Gordon Strassenberg. He had been hypothesizing the Paranthropus connection for decades now, just yelling this out in the woods, and no one is listening. But it turns out things are turning the corner, and he may be dead, but he will get his recognition. I think he's right.
Cool. I know I got a quick question from somebody that I trust and I've been in the woods with. And Ray here, and Steve's met him too. Did you ever investigate, this is for you, Cliff, have you ever investigated the Mapinguari in South America? They've been known to be on all four and stay bipedal. Now, Ray had multiple encounters that he's explained to me multiple times, but he didn't even know it, but somebody else chimed in. This gentleman was with Ray in South America, and they had 3 experiences with the Mapinguari less than 25 feet on their first encounter. And this kind of goes along to Joe's infrasound thing. And I froze. StreamYard is wonderful tonight, isn't it?
Well, it is cold in here.
Yeah. So, did you get a chance to look for the Mapinguari? I know you went to Brazil, but yeah. Okay.
Yeah. That's why we were down there. We talked to Dr. David Oren at great length about it. I spoke to a number of witnesses. And I think there's 2 things going down there, both of which are being ascribed to the word Mapinguari. The Mapinguari is often described as a Sasquatch-like things. Interestingly, they tend to be a little smaller, about 6-7 feet. Something like that, 5, 6, 7 feet, somewhere in there, and that jibes exactly with what I was talking about earlier with Bergman's rule. Again, the warmer the climate, the smaller the animals tend to be. But there's also, we got a number of reports out of there that seem to be describing maybe what Dr. Oren thinks, which is a giant ground sloth of some sort. Because down in Patagonia, I think that some of the more recent giant ground sloth fossils have been found, and they're very recent, like 10,000 years old or something. It wouldn't surprise me at all if a couple of those things were walking around, because some of the people who were our witnesses described these things with big claws and that's a ground sloth, But other people told me no, it was a monkey walking on 2 legs that didn't have a tail. because there they have monkeys, and like the native people and the people who live and make their living out of the jungle, whether they're native or not, or whatever mixture of native they might be, they have monkeys there, so they have something to pinpoint it with, some sort of anchor. It's like, yeah, it was a monkey, but it didn't have a tail, and it was as big as me, and it walked by on 2 legs. So I got both of those kinds of reports out of Brazil when I was there.
Okay. Yeah, these guys were, well, I could say it, Ecuador.
Yeah, same thing. There's reports of these things all over South America, but no one is writing about it, so it goes unheard at this point. It's like the same reason everybody equates Sasquatch with the Pacific Northwest is because the early writers all lived here. The victors of the war get to write the history. That's kind of an echo of that idea.
So, where would you guys like to go? Where is your bucket list? And I know some of you got to travel farther than some of the rest of us, but where is your bucket list to go look for the next cryptid or Bigfoot or Yeti or, where would you like to go? Start with Jay. He's kind of lost there in thought. Where's your bucket list?
Well, of course, I want to hit the Pacific Northwest. I mean, I've never been there, heard plenty about it, and it would be a dream come true to visit Cliff's Museum. That's on my bucket list. I'm going to be out there, but I'd also like to do some hiking, researching out in that area too. So, and that's kind of where my dream place would be to go right now.
Well, you're here now, luckily.
I know, right?
It's not much to look at on this end. Out front, it's really nice.
It does. I follow your live feeds and everything when you were taking us on tours and asking us questions with Mel, and it's great. It's almost like I know you personally, Cliff.
Almost. Well, it's just funny because the back rooms in museums are actually just as interesting as the front rooms.
That's for the best
They're
stuff.
actually better.
Bones and coffee cups.
Yeah.
Definitely better.
Cliff, where do you want to go? I mean, you got to go to a lot of places.
Right now I'd like to go to South Africa. I've never been to Africa. I would really like to go there. And there's a new book was published in January. I've been singing its praises on my own podcast. But in case anybody hasn't listened, it's called Beyond the Secret Elephants is what it is. It's a sequel to The Lives of Secret Elephants, if I remember right. Yeah, Beyond the Secret Elephants. It's written by Gareth Patterson is his name. No relation to Roger, of course. But he is a world-renowned naturalist and ecologist, biologist sort of guy. He cut his teeth working with the lions from Born Free, like that guy. He was his apprentice. So he worked with lions for a large part of his career. And through, life is weird. So through his various paths of life, he started studying these African elephants in South Africa. This population of elephants that were said to have gone extinct. It was down to one old female individual, this matriarch. Well, he said, well, I don't know. I keep hearing stories. So he kind of moved into the area and started doing his own elephant researching. And he found out that no, there's not one. There's like dozens of these things. But no, everybody thought these elephants were all gone. But no, there's like 20 or 25 of these things or more. I don't even know. I'd have to ask him. We interviewed him for the podcast because it turns out he's been doing the elephant thing for a decade or something, give or take a few years. And during that time, he has seen, for all the world, Sasquatches. I think, like, God, what did he say? Was it 6 or 8 times? Wow. Maybe it was 4 times in 6 years. I'll see numbers in my memory, but I've got it documented, so I don't need to remember it. I can go look it up. But basically, he was studying elephants, and he started running across 6 to 7 foot tall man apes in the woods of South Africa. And it's just fascinating because he didn't expect to find it. He didn't want to look at these. He didn't think they were even there. And so this book, Beyond the Secret Elephants, is just amazing because it's mostly about elephants. And then like every chapter or two, and then we were out there and we saw this, and he describes it, and we correspond now. He sent me some footprint evidence that is interesting. He sent me some handprint evidence. I mean, I share stuff with him now, like, hey, look for this kind of stuff. And now he's taken to documenting They're called otangs or otongs, is OTANG. No relation to the word orangutan, because that's forest, But he started documenting his sightings and the evidence he finds for otangs in the same way he does the elephants. And he's just kind of thrown that into the data pile and is now sorting it out himself. So more than anything right now, I would love to go to South Africa, because it sounds like in this rather smallish area, there's a pretty high probability over the years of seeing something if you stick it out and you're out there every day.
Yeah, I had a friend that just did a whole bunch of UFO stuff, but he's done stuff for National Geographic and Discovery. He's a photographer, and he's always like, gotta go. But he's another West Coast guy like you are now, and it's like, yeah, surfer on him, but he loves. And hopefully David's watching right now, because I'm trying to pull him out of the Bigfoot thing.
Oh yeah, well, listen to the Bigfoot and Beyond with Gareth on. I think we published it. I think you have to double check. I don't even know my own podcast. I don't know. I don't listen to that one either, it turns out.
It's good. You should listen to it. You're funny on it.
I love it.
Thanks.
So, hey, Eddie. Joe, where do you want to go?
Oh, I'd love to go to Vancouver Island. So many stories coming out of there. Of course, got to visit Bluff Creek. Never been out there. The Northwest is primarily where I would love to go. I got a taste of it this past summer. Went to the Sierra Nevadas and Lake Tahoe and fell in love. I have to get a house out there, man. It's just unbelievable, That's where I primarily would look to go right now. Cliff, you know who John Kirk is?
Oh yeah, good friend of mine.
Yeah, ask him about the Godoo. You heard the Godoo? He did a story about the Godoo, which were African, what you were just talking about.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Tribe.
Yeah, there are pocket stories of unknown hominoids all throughout Africa. Very little's been written, though. It's kind of like the South American thing we just talked about. The writers are the ones who get the recognition, I guess. Go on.
But I remember him telling a story about them one time at the Ohio conference, and I was like, "Whoa, man! I would never think that there was another huge ape like that in Africa, just like what you were explaining, 7 to 8 feet tall." Bipedal, the whole bit. And they were a little bit more aggressive than just shy, put it that way. That's what he was saying. But get in touch with him, and I bet you can give you some more information.
Big Steve, where do you want to go?
I want to go look for the Yowie. I want to go to Australia. See, Africa, stuff eats you in Africa. I want to avoid Africa. Stuff, lions,
yeah, after talking to Mel, yeah.
But yeah, I think Australia. Their apex predator is the dingo. So,
well, yeah, but like 7 or 8 of the most venomous snakes in the world live there.
Snakes, spiders, everything else.
That's true.
All kinds of bugs that'll kill you.
Yeah, big crocodiles, Mick Dundee, they got it all.
And the guys over there will just heckle the crap out of you. Holy smoke, they're ruthless. Yeah, it's like verbal rugby. It's insane over there, those guys.
How long did you guys spend there, Cliff, when you guys went over?
About 2 weeks or so.
2 weeks?
No, but Steve, you gotta go, dude. It's like people ask me, where would you like to go back to? And I always say, well, home, because I live here. But besides that, it's Australia, 100%. You would love it.
Yeah, the whole verbal thing, it just I kind of got a taste of Australia because I had a couple of friends that were from there. And the Crocodile Dundee thing where they're always battering one another with verbally is very true.
Yeah.
They're great. So, but yeah, I think the Yowie is awesome. I think I'd like to get, my nose into that and see if there's something to that.
But nobody for Nepal, huh? That's where I want to go.
Too cold. Too cold. Although going to New Zealand, and I actually, Paul Bartholomew's brother, Bob, Dr. Bob Bartholomew lives in New Zealand. Wouldn't mind going out there to look for the Tasmanian tiger. That'd be kind of cool too.
There's also Sasquatch-like things there, like the native people are aware of them. And Bobo knows a couple people who have had sightings, and he's more in touch. Like Bobo has a whole slew of Aborigine friends down there in Australia. They have contacts in New Zealand, and so Bobo knows some people down there. And apparently, there's something running around down there too, which isn't too surprising, I guess. But if they're in Australia, but
Wow.
All right, gentlemen. Now who has new projects coming up? Cliff, you want to talk a little bit about the museum? I know Steve's got a new book. There's always Finding Jay, and I don't know what Joe's got new on the thing. So, are you guys getting ready to open again soon?
We've been open for about 2 weeks or so. Actually, I don't live, and I don't. And my museum isn't in the same county as Portland. I'm a rural county outside of Portland, and so we were allowed to open up. Portland still isn't open, actually, but we got to open up about 2 weeks ago with modifications. We have to sterilize things and wear masks and do whatever. But wearing a mask seems like a very small price to pay to open my business again. I would wear a pink tutu and a monkey suit if they asked me to. I don't care what it takes. I want to open my business, right? Yes. So we've been open. It was a hiccup. It's definitely set us back. We were supposed to have a bunch of new displays done by April. But now financially and the time crunch and all this other stuff, we're hoping to get it maybe up and running, like not up and running, these new displays, as many as 6 or 7 of them by hopefully July. And of course, like I said earlier in the broadcast here, stuff comes in all the time. I mean, for example, between Christmas and the last week of February, I did 6 on-site investigations that were within 2 days of sightings or footprint finds. So that keeps me pretty busy. And when you add the museum and just like the management of the shop, all the Bigfoot stuff going on, just pages and pages of sighting reports and documentation coming in all the time, it's like I'm just drowning in this. But somehow or another, I still manage to get on the horn with Bobo once a week for Bigfoot and Beyond, our podcast. Tomorrow, we're going to, it won't come out tomorrow. It'll come out in like 2 or 3 weeks, maybe. We're going to re-interview Shane Corson from the Olympic Project, good friend of mine, because I'll give you a little teaser, and this is kind of a cool thing, especially for you nerds that actually listen every single week. Back in February, last week of February, I had to actually leave in the middle of recording our broadcast.
I remember that.
Yeah, because something important happened. Well, tomorrow we interview Shane Corson, and you get to learn why I had to leave. Basically, new stuff is happening at the Olympic Project Nest site. Shane's at the cutting edge of it all. And we're going to go into that tomorrow with Shane. I don't know when it'll be broadcast, probably in the next couple of weeks, because that's a really good, important show. I cast footprints. I cast handprints at the site. Great stuff was happening there. I got Ray Dougherty lined up later in the week. He's a Yowie researcher from Australia, of all things. We're just talking about that. So, yeah, I still managed to do all that somehow and, do my Bigfoot stuff best I can.
I actually thought that was really cool on the podcast. I'm like, how do you plan to add that drama? You're like, Cliff's in the middle of recording his own show. Like, I got to go, guys.
I got to go. I had to drive 3 hours to the Olympic Peninsula to go to the spot to sleep overnight and get out at 7 a.m. to go get these things because the rain was coming at noon. And there were 2 handprints that we knew of, and I found a third in the ground. So I had to get there and get them cast and get them out by noon, essentially.
Yeah, that's good. Dedication. That's awesome.
And we appreciate you joining us tonight. I mean, it's been an honor for me tonight. So I do appreciate you and coming in and giving us your.
I'm definitely not some celebrity, man. I'm just a Bigfoot nerd that got lucky and I'm sasquatch just like you guys are. It's all good.
But you're a busy dude. That's a big thing.
I am a busy dude. I'll give you that.
Which is true. I was going to say, Cliff, I just wanted to throw this in because I restarted on Netflix, The Finding Bigfoot. I just started at season 1, episode 1.
Oh, we're like little kids in that.
But it's awesome because you did your first yell, and I remember was it Renee was next to you, and she said that was really good, and then you said I practice in the shower, and I just busted out laughing because I could just imagine somebody sitting there screaming in the shower. I just thought it was
and then. The neighbor in the apartment next door, Barackman's doing it again. Gee.
So I let Steve use the call blaster.
I used the call blaster. No sense in blowing my voice out.
Scaring the crap out of me.
I forgot about that.
I do have a little blooper thing here at the bottom. So the best stories. Jay, what do you got coming up? And I keep posting your guys' websites as well as I'm going along here. So.
You know what? I work, I'm back to work from being furloughed, so I do have my paying job. Honestly, what I like to do, and that's what I've always done, is I just like to get out into the woods. So it's not so much I'm working towards a project per se. You know, I came out with my documentary last year. I mean, I've never stopped researching with it, but I have interviewed a few people that have seen Sasquatch in the area that I'm researching in. So that's been really good. You know, documentary or books or anything, all that aside for now, this is good for me to document what I'm learning in my own area. So that's what I'm doing right now. Pretty much just working, getting out in the woods, and enjoying a little bit of freedom here in Wisconsin. We're not as tight as some other states. So yeah, so that's what I'm doing right now.
Big Joe, what do you got going on?
I really have nothing going on. No, I got nothing going on. I was going to go see a really good friend of mine, but this COVID thing happened, and me and Eric were going to try and meet up with him in June. Great guy, Dave Page, clairvoyant, Bigfoot experiencer, and he lives in rural PA out in Bradford County, and we were going to try and get together with him for, you know, an excursion, because we hadn't seen him in years, since like 98, 99, somewhere around there, man. And we just wanted to get back together with him. As far as other things, man, I between work and you know, family things, I live with my mom and stuff, and I take care of her. She's wheelchair bound, so I really don't get to go out as much as I used to. But because I don't like to leave the burden on my wife, you know. And but other than that, you know, I enjoy you guys. Cliff is just amazing. I mean, the stuff you learn from this guy is crazy. I mean, above and beyond what I know. I mean, I give you a lot of credit, man. You learn so much from you.
I'm a nerd.
Steve too.
Yeah.
Steve, you're amazing. I love your report that you did at the last PAA conference. You know, debunking the what was the creature book. That was amazing, dude. That was just freaking amazing. You're another incredible. You are a detective, man. You can do so much. And you know, Jay, you know what, man? I would love to come out to see you this year, man. I got 4 weeks of vacation, and I wouldn't mind coming out to see you.
Definitely, invitation's always open.
And you know what? You do that, Joe. Pick me up. Because my right now I'm almost 3 months on my vacation.
Yeah, you guys.
And I've been there every day.
Yeah,
always open invitation. Even Cliff, and I know you want to go to South Africa, not Wisconsin, but if you ever wanted to come up here, it'd be great.
Get some cheddar.
Get some bears, brats, and Bigfoot.
Right. Yeah. Most of my travel is around the speaking engagements that are largely canceled this year.
There you go.
Yeah. That's the one thing I miss, is that all these engagements I miss. So you miss that connectivity with people, and people don't understand the connectivity you have in those things. You know, there's people out there, you know, they're always doing speaking, but that's how you meet the people. That's how you get a lot of these stories.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. It's networking.
Yeah.
It's networking, which is the value of groups. I know I dissed groups earlier, but that's essentially what groups are for, is like hanging out with cool people that you like, right? And these conferences that unfortunately we don't get to participate in very many of this year. It's about networking and also putting aside our differences, because you may have noticed it's a rather polarizing time. You know, and frankly, I'm a West Coast hippie, right? So like when I go places, I was in Texas last year, and somebody says, "I understand you're a liberal, but you seem like an okay guy to me." And I said, "Oh no, crap!" And I'm like, "I'm not liberal, like Republican. No, I'm not a Democrat either. Those guys, again, I'm not a joiner, right? So you can't box me in, so to speak. But it's a good way to kind of put differences aside and enjoy hanging out with people you enjoy time with, in a way that you don't have to argue or to get in a pissing match about stuff that doesn't matter. You know, I miss it. So.
Yeah. Let's just get to, and I agree that, you know, nothing beats that face-to-face, the handshake, the let's talk, that diffuses everything. So
yeah, it turns out that in person, everybody's pretty much cool. Online, everybody's a dick.
They can hide behind their screens and they can't talk right like me and get names wrong. And my pronunciation
Matt.
is everywhere. Uh-huh. So, and I broke bread with you guys. That's even worse.
Well, what we all need to do is, since we were all together, we got to talk to Eric again, and maybe next year, 2021, get a little PA Bigfoot camping adventure going. Start a petition.
That's right.
That's what Cliff down.
I've got a special show lining up for Eric. So
We can talk about him now. He left.
Oh, he did?
yeah. And if he puts a wonderful thing on. I mean,
well, honestly, it's how I networked with you guys. It's how I met Cliff last year. And that's great that he was able to do that. I know he says he just puts this together, and I'm like, you don't realize how big it is, though, that we can come together like that. I mean, I call you guys my brothers. Even Cliff, you hippie from California, the West Coast. I mean, like you said, it's all about networking.
People are people.
Yeah. I mean, I never would have heard my first scream there if it wasn't, with you guys. And, it's.
Oh, yeah. That was our first time.
Print, yeah. Jay looking at me, and I'm like, you got to say, what was that?
Yeah, it was not anybody else. Yeah, it's pretty cool.
One last thing on a funny note, because usually I have Kristie here to keep me laughing and keep things so I'm not so serious. What are those one blooper from being out in the woods or filming, or you guys have each been on some sort of TV show or something, but just and Steve, me falling over with microphones on doesn't count either.
No. I'll give you one here.
Yeah, I know I went there. You got enough on me. Well, we lost. What happened to Joe? We lost Joe. What's that one thing that kind of made you laugh just once while you're out there? Start with.
Yeah, well, I was gonna say, I mean, blooper or not, just being out in the field. I always go out with not with the expectation, I guess, that I am going to see something odd, even though I really want to. I think I don't want to jinx myself. But I did have a light on as we're entering. Usually I'll walk with red lights, low red lights, or no lights in some instances. But I did have this light on, and the person I was with, Scott Marcus, we're just walking and talking. I swear this dog just came from, out of the bush, and I actually yelled. But it was just a reflection of the light. So, you would say a blooper. It was not caught on tape, though.
There I am.
Kind of fun.
Joe, what's your best blooper or funny story?
I got a funny ass story. First time out, first meeting Eric. We were out in PA, out on the ridge, and we were with Sam Sherry, old guy who was trying to trap Bigfoot. He had all these stories, and the Bigfoot stuck his head in the car and was face to face with and everything like that. So he's taking us to this honey tree where he was baiting all this stuff, and he had barbed wire around the tree and chicken wire around the tree, so he could get hair samples and stuff like that, and he was putting out food and apples and oranges and stuff, and we were like, okay, this is pretty cool. And we all got in the car. He goes, yeah, we'll come back tomorrow and we'll see what was taken and all this. And he had, stuff on the ground so you could catch footprints and everything. So we're driving down the road back to his house to drop him off. And Eric jumps out the car and he goes, you smell that? You smell that? And I'm like, I'm in my car and I have my windows down. I go, what? He goes, you don't smell that? I'm like, no, I don't smell that. Well, it turns out Sam Sherry ripped one in his car so bad. And we have Bigfoot on the brain, and he's thinking that he's smelling Bigfoot from the woods as we're driving home. Oh my God, it was so hysterical. So hysterical.
That's awesome.
Oh, very funny. It was very fun. We all had such a great laugh from that.
It's a good one. Cliff, what do you got?
Well, there'd be far too many from Finding Bigfoot to list off in any sensible fashion. But the first one that came into my head, if you want to hear more, Bobo and I sometimes just do episodes of Finding Bigfoot. Yeah. Bigfoot and Beyond, where we're just talking, and sometimes they come up. I remember once on the show, I don't remember where we were filming. I want to say it's maybe Kentucky or somewhere. I don't remember. It was a night investigation, and we're out there for hours and hours and hours. It's 4 or 7 minutes on screen, but we're out there for like 4 or 5 hours oftentimes, walking around, and a lot of times nothing's happening, right? So I remember we walked down this one area and piddled around and stuff. And then I remember walking back through the area. I had to therm up, and I saw a heat blip. I go, what is that? What? Like it looked like it looked like, well, that might be something that and they're filming me, and I spend the next, I'll cut it real short, but I spend the next 10 minutes like sneaking up, trying to get close. And I couldn't tell if it was moving or not and all this stuff. And I eventually got up right next to where it was. And I realized what I was looking at was a place I took a piss like 20 minutes earlier when we walked through the area. And they had all that on camera, but I could put out there. I took a leak over there by that tree when I was on the first pass through the area. So that came to mind. So.
Aren't those therms great?
It can be deceiving. I've been using therms for a long time, and even still, they play tricks on your eyes, and they're not exactly easy technology to get used to. So,
right.
Steve,
that's a good one.
Well, let's see. I have a number of the archives. One of the funniest ones I can remember was we were wrapping up America's Book of Secrets out one area, and as we're all of a sudden I start to notice, one of the camera guys is messing in an area off to the side of the campsite, and all of a sudden I start, looking at my flashlight. What the hell is that? And what he did was he rustled up a yellow jacket's nest that was in the ground. So all of a sudden, here comes this whole, maybe about 30, 40 of them come flying out all angry. Of course, the fearless commander yells, "Bees, run!" And I book it. And everybody's getting stung. And he's like, "Oh, man, I got bit here. Oh, I got bit here."
Oh,
it sounded good.
Not like it.
You just see a light go by. Bees, run! Yeah, but
good
Gentlemen,
times.
Great.
Good times.
Thank you. I hope that the new viewers tonight and some of the old ones got some education. I know I did. And I appreciate you all coming on and helping me out tonight. Kristie wasn't here, and hopefully she gets better soon. And she'll
get well, Kristie.
Yeah.
Yes.
So again, thank you very much. If you guys wouldn't mind hanging out for about 2 seconds while I close the show down, and I'll bring you guys back in the back room. And thank you. Sure, so again, folks, if you're there, I posted everybody's website so you can find everybody. And I'm going to just pop these guys out for a second here as I close up. Next week, here we go. We'll be on with Chuck Porter, and we're going to be doing a salute to our first responders, our military, as a paranormal show. So thank you, and we'll see you next week.